Hello, everyone. Welcome back to That'sControversial.com on Daisy 1170 AM, San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland. Richard J. Ayoub's on the phone with me. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Swami. How are you?
Good. I am Swami. I'm from the Morning Musty Show here every morning from 5A to 7A. Richard is the editor-in-chief of RumorFix.com, a website that creates or fixes, fixes rumors you hear in Hollywood. He is an Emmy award-winning producer, and we have our own show called That's Controversial, talking about today's news, pop news, culture news, world news, political news, any news you want to hear for the week. We talk about it and have a little fun and banter with it. So let's start off, Richard J. Ayoub. Let's start off with the news I'm interested about, and I don't know too much about yet, and maybe you could help me out. What is going on here with that Notre Dame football player whose friend supposedly, what's his name, Ronaiah
Tuiasosopo.
Okay, now he was on the Dr. Phil show, who's a friend of yours.
Yeah.
And he claims that he's a homosexual and he was raped. And Rumor Fix says that's true.
Yes, he talked to Dr. Phil. Just to give you a little backstory, this is a guy who played a hoax for almost 4 years on this Notre Dame player, Manti Te'o, and Manti was runner-up in the Heisman Trophy. So this is a guy who is on the track to NFL stardom. And this is a kid, Ronaiah, who had some kind of infatuation, some unhealthy feelings toward Manti, where he created this character of a woman. And what was fascinating about the Dr. Phil interview is there were these recordings of this woman, Lanai, who called up Manti and left different voicemail messages. Now, FBI experts, voice analysts, all these people who have expertise in this area of voice recognition said that there is no way on earth, or a very remote chance, that this is a man's voice, and a remote chance that it is a voice that belongs to Ronaiah. So Dr. Phil asked the question that I have been dying to hear. Is this your voice? He said, yes. Okay, do the voice for me. Now, Dr. Phil, being brilliant communicator and brilliant TV personality, teased this for 2 days. And finally, Friday, at the end of his show, we heard Ronaiah do the voice.
Really? And you surprised about that voice? Are you intrigued?
I'm extremely intrigued because the voice sounds like a girl.
Right.
You've heard it. There's no doubt that it sounds like a girl. Now, he told Dr. Phil, I can't do it here with all these people, under the lights, everything else. He went behind a screen and he did the voice. It sounded identical to me. Dr. Phil ran it through 3 different voice analysts, and they said, well, it's a lot closer to the voice on the voicemail, but we can't with certainty say it's the same voice. So Dr. Phil sent a producer to Ronaiah's house and taped him in his own setting and authenticated it because the producer was there. And then they sent it to the voice analysts again, and the voice analysts, every single one of them said, that's the same voice.
Right. Same person.
Same person.
Hey, Richard, we have a special guest here. Lowell Tuckerman is the sports broadcaster and analyst for our state radio station here at Daisy 1170 AM. And he wanted to talk to you about what's going on right now.
Hi, Lowell.
Richard, good to speak with you.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, too.
So, Richard, Lowell, tell us, me and Richard, about what's your take. You are a sports enthusiast. You are a sports broadcaster here at Daisy 1170 AM and producer. What's your whole take on this whole situation going on?
It's so strange, Swami. It's one of those where I won't have formulated all of my thoughts on this maybe a months down the road because it's just so strange.
Now, Richard, go ahead.
I wanted to ask a real quick question, Lloyd. What do you think this does to Manti's chances of the NFL draft? Does it help? Does it hurt? Or does it make no impact whatsoever?
It's going to be anywhere from no impact to hurting a little bit, and it's one of those deals where it's a team is going to talk to him during the combine. It's basically a job interview for college football players going into the NFL. I would say teams looking to draft him, that they might spend a little extra time evaluating his mental state. But as far as how much money he'll get out of college and where he'll be drafted, I think it'll have very little, if any, effect. I just think more teams are going to just be real careful and maybe send a psychologist or two after the guy.
Do you think it shows he's very vulnerable and like he had a fake relationship for almost 4 years? Like that, I'm sure it's not as odd as we think it is, because catfishing is a phrase. Catfishing is an MTV show, and it obviously happens.
You're right. I think the vulnerability is a good way to put it, and also how gullible can you be? It's almost like I don't know about you, Richard. When I first heard about this, I didn't buy it. Not for a minute, not for 1 second. I didn't buy how someone could be so gullible and be pulled into something like this. It was just impossible to. It's impossible to believe the guy. I think again, if anything, it's not going to hurt his career and the dollars in his bank account. It's just going to hurt the way he's looked at and maybe his perception, at least to the fans and to the sports community.
I wonder on Rumor Fix, by the way, Lowell, Richard is the editor-in-chief of RumorFix.com, as you know. There is something on it. When he did an interview with Katie Couric, they talked to Manti, and they said, did you have phone sex with your girlfriend, who ended up being that guy? And he said, not really. I'm wondering, and I'm kind of curious about your take on the man. I just have a hard time believing how it is that you can actually believe this girl was actually. I mean, how can you believe this actually happened? How can you even? I can't fathom talking to someone for 4 years and not once meeting that person, or two, actually being hoaxed for 4 years.
Yeah, I heard the recording of, I think his name is Renoa Tuasosopo, and he claims that was his voice too. I tell you what, he did a pretty good job of impersonating a woman. He had me fooled from that clip I heard, and maybe it's just one of those deals where he was so into it. I'm talking about Manti Te'o, that he kind of forced himself to believe it. He said, you know what, this may be too good to be true. Here's a woman who courted me online, who knows a lot about what my grandma was going through at the time, who the lady died of cancer, of course. I just think he was so entrenched into it. It got to the point where his brain just forced him to believe it, and that's the only way I'm buying it. If maybe the whole psychology of him forcing himself to believe it.
Well, also, there is the argument that when you have an online relationship or a cyber relationship where you don't ever see that person, whether it's FaceTime or Skype or any video chat or in person, that perhaps he was fine with that kind of relationship, perhaps because of religious beliefs or perhaps because of pressures at home. It gave him a girlfriend, whether it is our idea and concept of what a girlfriend would be.
Right, exactly. And that's probably why he took a lot of, some people aren't ready for a girlfriend, and he's so busy, he's probably doing his own thing, that I heard he took a lot of nonsense, took a lot of bullying and picking on by his teammates, saying, why don't you have a girlfriend? You're a star athlete. You are the man in Indiana right now. How can you possibly not have a girlfriend?
You know, we know the reason, and the reason was he wanted to portray he had a girlfriend, but we'll never know the reason behind the reason. Why did he want to portray to the media and to the public that he had a girlfriend? There's so many different theories on that.
So on that note, we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens tomorrow, Richard Ayoub. Rumor Fix is reporting that John Legend, the singer, is rooting for Ray Lewis and the Baltimore Ravens. What's your take on that, Richard? Who are you rooting for?
I am rooting for the Baltimore Ravens, even though they will not allow one of their cheerleaders to perform. And she has been with the Ravens for 4 years. This is going to be her last year. She's retiring, and they said they just couldn't take each and every one of the cheerleaders there, and she says it's because she gained 1.6 pounds.
Wow, that's but then again, you shouldn't be rooting for the Niners. I mean, the Niners, you have all that. You had that issue going on earlier this week with that. Who was that player that said that gays shouldn't be allowed in the locker room?
It was Chris Culver, a little-known and, well, not little-known anymore, but at the time, a third-string defensive back, a guy who the average or even above-average fan wouldn't know about. And, this guy – hey, by the way, it's worth noting, Richard, Chris Culver gained about 7,000 Twitter followers since his anti-gay comments. So that's worth noting.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Whenever you take a stand on anything, you will find people to agree with you. There are obviously a lot of homophobic people out there and people who support gay rights, and so either side would be happy to, throw their support if you do say something extreme on either side.
And I was just saying, I was thinking about this. He's just probably saying, and I hate to be judgmental and assuming, but I will assume he's just saying what probably a good number of people in this society still are saying, that they're not going to allow a gay athlete. They don't accept that.
Well, what's interesting, I just read that he's going to be taking some sensibility training. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he's going to do, and this is very near and dear to my heart, is he's going to become a volunteer for the Trevor Project.
Oh, that's huge. And tell everyone what the Trevor Project is.
The Trevor Project is the only 24-hour, 7-day-a-week suicide prevention hotline for gay, lesbian, and questioning teens. And I don't know if your audience knows, but the chance of gay teens committing suicide is 5 times as likely as any other teenager. So I think that, when something like this happens, of course, there's those people who, follow him on Twitter, but then there's the GLAAD organization and, other organizations, and of course probably the 49ers coming down on him, and it becomes as Oprah would say, a way to help educate and enlighten.
Right.
Yeah.
So John Legend roots for the Ravens. And Lowell here says the Ravens, he predicts the Ravens will win by 3-7, right, Lowell?
3 to 4.
3 to 4 points.
That's how I am more confident about how the game will play out in terms of the score rather than the team who will win. I just think there's no way it's going to be a blowout either way. And look at it this way. You have two brothers coaching against each other. Would you want to embarrass your brother? And from the standpoint I get, these two brothers have no bad blood against each other. I think you'll see a friendly coached game. You're not going to see crazy trick plays. You're not going to see dirty plays by either side. I just think it's going to be a clean game. It's just going to be low scoring and could come down to maybe a field goal, Swami.
Well, that's good.
Is this the first time, let me ask you, is this the first time that brothers have coached against each other for the Super Bowl?
Oh, yes. First time in any major sports history, MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL. First time in major pro sports history. And just to give you some perspective, only once has two brothers played against each other. And
oh, wow.
So now we're having the first time we have two brothers coached against each other. Because obviously, look, there are going to be less coaches than players in any sport, in any league. So it's just incredible. You know, Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, that's the time I'm talking about, where two brothers did play against each other as starting quarterbacks. So, yeah, this is exceptionally rare.
Well, let me ask you another follow-up question. What about Mom? Who does she root for?
I know who the dad, Jack, is rooting for. In fact, this was one of those little Sports Insiders thing. But the dad is going to root for John Harbaugh, coach of the Ravens, because Jack has spent a lot of time before the season in training camp with the Ravens. And Harbaugh, actually, of course, Jim Harbaugh, the younger brother, here's a guy who had a successful career as a professional athlete, very popular athlete and a popular guy. And as a coach, the guy has been a success really ever since he put on the coaching hat. And then you look over at the older brother, John, a guy who, you know, didn't have a successful coaching or successful playing career and kind of got into coaching because of his dad. And sort of the guy you root for is the guy who kind of had it tougher and the guy who had to work for it. And John, the older brother, kind of had to work for it in the way that you and I work for it. You know, we not having the silver spoon, not having the great abilities, just kind of, you know, with hard work. So I know who Jack is going to root for. I don't know if Mom and Dad will split. Okay, I'm voting for Jim. You vote for or you root for John. It's a great question. And the mom is she's a character I don't know much about because you hear the dad talk with the media a lot more than the mom. But yeah, that's all I can offer up.
Speaking of females, let's switch topics really quickly, Richard and Lowell. And let's talk a little bit about politics and human rights and U.S. rights. Hillary Clinton, our Secretary of State, Madam Secretary, has left the building, ladies and gentlemen. She has left after 3 decades in the public eye. She has walked away, and everyone's waiting to see what she does in 2016. What's your take about her position in life and what she has done in the last 4 years?
Well, what I will say is that I remember when she gave her first speech to the staff when she was appointed Secretary of State. And they were very cordial, and I'm sure they were just a little skeptical. But when she gave this speech, I guess it was on Friday, saying goodbye and thanking them, it felt like it was a team. It felt like they really adored her, respected her, and loved her. You know, they had been through a lot together, and I don't believe there is any Secretary of State in the history of this country that has traveled to more countries than she has. And I think President Obama even said that she went to many countries twice during her term there. She took this job extremely seriously and did a phenomenal job. And I think she is definitely poised to run for the presidency.
Well, I think, you know, what happened is it really humbled her. She is labeled as I see her as a different human being, and I'll tell you why. I humanized her a little bit. I never saw her as an underdog, to be honest with you, Richard and Lowell. I always saw her a bit spoiled. I always saw her always in the public eye because of Bill. Even when she became senator, I said to myself, well, you know what? She was first lady. Now she's, of course, going to be senator. And then when she lost that election, I think it humanized her. I think it was the first time in the public internally where she's failed. You know, she's always failed externally when people gave her a hard time about the health care, gave her a hard time about the election, but it really humanized her and really made her look at the world a different way. And she is sort of the Bobby Kennedy of our generation. Wouldn't you say a human rights, civil rights leader?
Well, I never thought of her in those terms. It's interesting to compare a woman to a man. But I definitely think that she is one of the most seasoned, knowledgeable people in Washington about world affairs. So I think she really has been there, done that, and the very next thing she could do is president. There's just nothing left except retirement, and I don't think she's going to do that.
Absolutely not. The Clintons don't retire.
No.
Go ahead, Drill.
Hey, I was thinking about something, Richard, with Hillary Clinton's health problems. You hear about that, of course. That was, a big topic of discussion. And if she were to ever run for president, it always comes down to that 3, 4, or 5% or so in the popular vote. Back in 2008. There's a large percentage of voters who didn't vote for McCain because they thought he was too old. Do you think there will be that same number of people not voting for Clinton because of the health concerns?
It all depends on what her health is going to be like for the next few years. We have short-term memory in this country, and we like to forget things, and we like to move on. So right after she got out of the hospital, she was walking, and she was going to meetings, and she held that, she was testifying before some committee, and she was passionate. So I think people have already forgotten about some of her health problems that she had.
And I think that it's about time. Their world has changed. I said this during the election, during the debates with my friends in LA. They did not believe me then. They fortunately do now. I said females will and minorities will decide the election. Females have decided the election. And if you look now, Richard, the age of feminism, the age of females, minorities taking the lead in this country is becoming more and more apparent to me. It might not be for America, they don't realize this. But if you look at even in entertainment with the show Girls becoming big, Hillary Rodham Clinton becoming an icon. She's on the cover, I think, Time Magazine as one of the most important females ever in American history. It's going to be time for a female to be president. It's just the right timing.
It's definitely the next step, unless you want a Hispanic president. But definitely, I don't know. I'm sure there are still people in this country who think of Barack Obama as a black president. I just think of him as the president. But still, if you just sit with that thought and see how far this country has come, it is pretty amazing.
True. Speaking of President Barack Obama, there is news right now. The White House, there's news that there's a Flickr picture of Barack Obama, the president, shooting a gun. This was taken in August of 2012. He is getting ready now. He's going to go out of town real quick. He's going to go to Minneapolis, actually Monday. He's going to Minneapolis to talk about gun control proposals. What's your take on, the president shooting a gun? I know I was telling Lowell earlier today before the show, for us it's not a big deal. But I think for the population, there is a big percentage or a small percentage of the population that will see him as a, how do I say this, sort of as a bully, judging others, when he's doing the shooting himself.
Well, everything is done with political intentions. So this, I just read, has been released by the White House.
Oh, okay.
So the reason the White House would release a picture of him shooting a gun is so that he can curry favor with the Republicans, saying, look at me, I do skeet shooting, I have a gun, I play with a gun, I get the appeal for guns, but, guns are deadly and there need to be some regulations. So it is a way to sway some Republicans and there are a lot of gun owners in this country. It's interesting. I was on jury duty a couple of months ago, and it was a murder case, and the judge asked all the potential jurors, how many of you own a gun or know someone in your family who owns a gun?
How many?
About 90% of the people raised their hands.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely true. So what do you think about this gun law? Do you think anything's going to happen? Do you think automatic weapons, and what's your whole take on the gun procedure, this whole gun situation?
I think that the majority of Americans believe in the right to bear arms.
Right.
But I think more and more Americans are believing that there need to be some strict regulations now, or, have them locked up or have a certain license. There are a lot of places in this country where you can get a gun with no problem at all, and there's no tracking of those guns.
Right, and that's what they really want to do. They want to track these guns to make sure. It's weird, though, man. If you think about it, they say all these mentally ill kids, but if you look at the massacres, a lot of them, a good number of them, took place by people who aren't mentally ill. Wealthy kids from wealthy families who you would never think would do school shootings.
Absolutely. But that's the impetus, and you may not be able to stop those crazy people from doing shootings, but maybe it's going to make someone think twice about buying a gun. Maybe it's going to keep the guns locked up more. I don't know. You just have to hope that somehow this insanity is going to stop, because even the most adamant gun lovers in the country would not want a crazy guy to get a gun and shoot elementary students. It's just, no one can condone that.
You're listening to That's Controversial, an entertainment, political news show every week, coming to you on Daisy, 1170 a.m. Richard, we only have a few minutes to go. How do you want to end this first show?
I think that it would probably be best to talk about Justin Bieber.
Let's do that. The Bieber fever. I'm a huge fan of Justin Bieber, but looks like he's getting some trouble. I am a little concerned that he's going the way of Lindsay Lohan and Miley Cyrus. He's 18 now, and yes, when we're teenagers, we make mistakes, and we spread our wings, and our voice changes, and we get pubic hair. But he's got a lot of kids who are under the age of 13 who follow him and who adore him and think he's a great role model. Yeah, a lot of people love the Bieber. I love Bieber fever. And are you talking about how he's been getting in a little bit of trouble over the pot smoking? And there's this other rumor where he's been partying really hard. And
yeah, and that he's hanging out with some really bad people. And, he's got all the toys. He's got the Ferrari. He's got the, what's that new really hot car, the Fisker. He really is just, like, doing some things. He allegedly, they found some syrup. I don't know what it's called. It's like cough syrup that has codeine.
Oh, that's right, and that's what Lil Wayne likes to drink.
Yeah, and so it's a drug, and it's not good for you. And we are not saying that he drank it, but there are pictures that are being pitched to different news agencies and media outlets of Justin allegedly smoking pot, and there is this liquid near the table, and if you just read up on it, what people do is they dip the blunts of pot in that liquid, and then they smoke it.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if that's what he's doing, but that's, it's going into a really, really dangerous area. And the last time, or the first time that it was reported that he was smoking pot, some of the kids on Twitter, where the young girls were saying, and I think some of the young boys were saying they were going to cut themselves until he stopped. So I don't like that. He's got to realize, I know he's an individual and I know he has to live his life, but he's got people who watch every step he's doing and who adore him and idolize him. And it's kind of scary.
Well, it's a normal entertainment thing to do, unfortunately. I don't want to be a pessimist. But, the partying, and my opinion is this, Richard. I think everyone needs to party a little bit. I think you need to get it out of your system. I think that everyone needs to get a little partying out of their system. Or else what ends up happening is you have a little midlife crisis, and you do the partying then. So I don't... listen, first of all, he lets his friends drive his white Ferrari, so I'm going to be on good terms with him. Secondly, I love his song with Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, I love that song.
I love Nicki Minaj, by the way. She's one of my crushes. It's Nicki Minaj. You probably wouldn't believe it by just seeing me in person, but I do love Nicki Minaj.
What does that have to do with seeing you in person?
Just the way I look. I look a little bit like, an Indian librarian. You would never think, looking at me, that I have a huge fascination with Nicki Minaj, but I do. She might not read as many books as I read, but I still love her, and I love that booty she has. But, I understand where you're coming from. I don't think it's a factor of, people watching him and doing whatever he does. He is a role model. I think it's a factor that he's 18, extremely successful, where he could, if I have a Ferrari, I could let you drive it. I won't let anyone else drive it because you're my brother. But no one else is driving my white Ferrari. He's on top, and I think it's going to, we'll see what happens with his music. Yes, I don't think it's the best thing to do, but you can't lecture someone and tell people. The more people and more of these gossip columnists say, don't do it, it's bad, he's going to do it even more.
Well, I don't know, because there is someone, whether it's his manager, Scooter Braun, or his mother, someone is going to help guide him, and when they think he's out of control, because he's big business.
He's huge business.
You don't want to lose that big business. The problem is the Justin we saw in the documentary, Never Say Never, who seemed like he was still a sweet, humble kid who would go skateboarding and playing with friends, might not be that same Justin anymore. He's 18. He had a serious girlfriend with Selena Gomez. He flirted with these very hot Victoria's Secret models. He's done a lot. He hangs out with sometimes Chris Brown and some of these other rappers. So the guy has had some experiences since then, and maybe he's not listening to reason anymore. We don't know. I don't know if he's listening to that voice coach who seems to have great control over him based on that documentary.
Absolutely. Not in some ways. In some particular ways, he probably doesn't. Speaking of Chris Brown, of course, Chris Brown and Frank Ocean got in a fight. Frank Ocean says he got jumped by Chris Brown and his friends. Chris Brown was seen in pictures with a broken hand or a fractured hand after that fight.
Frank Ocean, braced, yes.
Yeah, braced. Frank Ocean is not pressing charges against Chris Brown. What's your take on this whole Chris Brown, Frank Ocean, Chris Brown situation?
Well, I think whenever you're a lesser name and you have a deal with someone who's a bigger name, in this case, Frank Ocean is a lesser name, Chris Brown is a bigger name. Frank Ocean is definitely on the rise. He's nominated for a Grammy. He's going to perform at the Grammys. Chris Brown is, as I wrote on RumorFix.com, a hothead. Remember when he was on Good Morning America and they asked him a question about Rihanna, and he broke the window and he took his shirt off and ran outside? I don't even know what that is. Like, I was watching Vanderpump Rules.
Right, exactly.
Like, these guys were about to get in the fight, they took their shirt off and got outside. What is that? What's with taking, you don't want blood on your shirt, you don't want the shirt ripped, what is it? I don't get that.
The shirt costs money. They don't want to screw up the shirt or the shoes. But he continues to do well in his career. I mean, no matter how many fights he gets in, no matter how many brawls he gets in, people love, I'd say this again, I'll say it one more time, people love drama.
Yeah,
they
plus
love
he has
drama.
Talent, and it keeps him in the news. It keeps him kind of interesting. He's hip hop. He's actually more crossover pop.
Yeah.
But it gives him some edge, and what it does for Frank Ocean is it gives him some association with a bigger name, and it helps him. Lloyd mentioned earlier, Lowell.
Yeah.
What's his name?
No, it's both the same. Lowell, Lloyd. I like Lloyd a little bit. We call him Laugh Out Lowell here.
Well, he mentioned that guy who made the anti-gay slurs gained these followers. I bet Frank Ocean gained thousands upon thousands, if not millions, of followers because of this Chris Brown fight.
It's interesting, isn't it? How? And by the way, we're gonna do 2 more news and then we're gonna leave. Twitter. Speaking of followers, Twitter created an app called Vine, Vine. Have you heard about this?
No.
You can videotape someone for 6 seconds, I believe, and you could go on your Twitter feed. And with videos getting increasingly bigger and bigger, they're saying this could be something interesting. And the reason analysts think they did this is because Twitter wanted to buy Instagram before Facebook did.
Oh, okay.
And lost out on that. And now they're saying that videos are the next big thing, not pictures. So Twitter's trying to be way ahead of the curve before someone else comes out with something that's like this.
Well, what I can tell you, working online and at rumorfix.com, is when you talk about money and where the money is made on the internet, it's on videos.
Absolutely.
So the number of streams you get, the number of views, it really matters on video, because you can make a lot more money on video versus a display banner ad on the website.
That's true. And last but not least, ending this conversation in our first ever That's Controversial video / podcast / episode here in February, beginning of February on 2013. I want to end with something unique. I want to end with a book review. If that's okay with you, because I read books and I think it's interesting and it's important.
I read magazines. I can review People magazine for you.
Okay, thanks. We'll do that next week. I read a book. I want to shout out to Steve Stout, The Tanning of America, Richard. Steve Stout is the manager of Jay-Z. He owns Translation Advertising, which is an advertising agency based in New York, which brands hip-hop artists and musicians. He was behind Justin Timberlake Loving It commercial, which you love.
Mm-hmm.
He used to sing it to me all the time.
Yeah.
He was behind Lady Gaga's Mac commercial and behind Jay-Z's S. Carter shoes.
Oh, wow.
Reebok. So he was behind all that. He was at Interscope Records. He used to manage Nas and Mary J. Blige. He was way up there at Interscope Records. He wrote this book. It's a great book, The Tanning of America by Steve Stout. It tells you about branding, how to be a brand, but in quick terms, being a brand is being yourself. And wherever you go, there you are, he says. Wherever you go, there you are. And he says to people, if you are listening right now and you're having a hard time figuring out your career, find out what comes easiest to you. And he says what comes easiest to you is usually what you're good at, and what you're good at and what you're interested in is usually what you'll strive and succeed at. And The Tanning of America by Steve Stout is our book club pick of the week on that'scontroversial.com. Richard Ayoub, thanks for coming along.
My pleasure, Swami.
And that's it for this week. We'll see you guys next week with more fun, more hip news, more political news, and just more drama as always on that'scontroversial.com. Thank you, Richard, from rumorfix.com.